The wedding is off. I don't love you anymore. Brandon said it loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. The Saturday lunch crowd at the Italian bistro in Portland, Oregon, went completely silent. I could feel 30 pairs of eyes turning toward our table near the window, the one he had specifically requested when we arrived. I sat there for a moment, my fork still suspended over my plate of chicken parmesan. The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. His friends at the adjacent table, the ones he had insisted join us for what he called a casual weekend lunch, were watching with barely concealed anticipation. My name is Megan, and I'm 27 years old. At that moment, sitting across from the man I had spent 4 years of my life with, something inside me quietly shifted. It was like a lock clicking into place rather than breaking apart. I set my fork down gently. Brandon was watching me with an expression I had seen before, but never fully recognized until that instant. A mixture of satisfaction and anticipation, like a child waiting to see what happens when you pull the wings off a butterfly. "Thank you for being honest," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. His eyebrows lifted slightly. That was not the reaction he had expected. I reached down to my left hand and slowly removed the engagement ring, the one he had proposed. With at his parents' anniversary dinner 2 years ago, making sure everyone was watching then too. I slipped it into my jacket pocket. "You know what?" I continued, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "I think I'm going to throw a narrow escape party." One of his friends snorted, and then a few others chuckled. Brandon's smirk deepened. He was enjoying this. I realized he had choreographed this moment, chosen this setting, invited these witnesses all so he could watch me crumble in public. But I did not crumble. "A narrow escape party," I repeated, more to myself than to anyone else. "Yes, I think that is exactly what this calls for." The laughter from his friend's table died down when they noticed I was not crying. I was not raising my voice. I was not causing a scene the way Brandon had clearly anticipated. Instead, I was reaching for my water glass and taking a slow, deliberate sip. "Megan," Brandon said, his voice carrying an edge now. "Did you hear what I said?" "I heard you perfectly," I replied. "You do not love me anymore. The wedding is off." "I believe I already thanked you for your honesty." His jaw tightened. This was not going according to his plan. I pulled my wallet from my purse and placed enough cash on the table to cover my portion of the meal, plus a generous tip for the server, who was probably going to have an interesting story to tell after her shift. "I have to say, Brandon, you picked quite a setting for this announcement," I said, standing up and gathering my things. "A crowded restaurant on a Saturday afternoon. Your friends conveniently here to witness everything. Very theatrical." His face rained slightly. "I thought you deserved the truth." "And I got it," I said simply. "More truth than you probably intended to give me." I looked at his friends, Tyler, Josh, and Kevin, who were now exchanging uncomfortable glances. The amusement had drained from their faces, replaced by something that looked almost like confusion. "Gentlemen," I said, nodding toward them, "thank you for being here today. Your presence has been illuminating." As I walked toward the exit, I could feel the weight of every stare in that restaurant. But instead of shame or humiliation, I felt something else entirely. Clarity. 4 years. I had given Brandon 4 years of my life. And in one carefully orchestrated moment, he had shown me exactly who he was. Not accidentally, not in a fit of emotion, but deliberately. He had planned this. Public execution of our relationship like a man planning a party. The auto mirror outside hit my face, and I took a deep breath. My hands were not shaking. My eyes were dry. I walked to my car in the parking lot with measured steps, unlocked the door, and sat behind the wheel. Only then, in the privacy of my own vehicle, did I allow myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened, but it was not devastation that washed over me. It was recognition. I had just witnessed Brandon reveal his true self, and the person he revealed was someone I did not want to marry. The realization was almost liberating. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Natalie. "How was lunch?" I stared at the message for a moment before typing back, "Wedding is canceled. I will explain later, but I am okay." "Actually, I think I am better than okay." Her response came immediately. "What? I am coming over tonight." I put the phone down and started the car. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced back at the restaurant one more time. Through the window, I could see Brandon still at our table. His friends gathered around him now. He was probably telling them I was in shock, but I had not fully processed what happened yet. He had no idea what was actually happening. He had just handed me the key to a door I had not even realized was locked. The drive home gave me time to think, and what I thought about were all the moments I had chosen not to see clearly over the past 4 years. I had met Brandon when I was 23, fresh out of college and working my first job as an assistant event coordinator at a conference center in downtown Portland. He was 25 then, a marketing associate at a pharmaceutical distribution company. Confident and charming in that way that made you feel like the only person in the room when he focused on you. Our first date was at a coffee shop near the waterfront. He had listened intently as I talked about my dreams of eventually starting my own event planning business. He had nodded in all the right places, asked all the right questions. Looking back now, I realized he had been gathering information rather than genuinely connecting. By the end of our first year together, I had started adjusting my life around his preferences. He did not like my college friends, so I saw them less. He thought my apartment was too far from his office, so I moved to a place closer to his side of town. He said my dream of starting a business was risky and I should focus on climbing the corporate ladder at my current job. So I put my entrepreneurial plans on hold. I told myself these were compromises. That is what relationships were about, right? Give and take, but the giving had been almost entirely mine. When I defended Brandon to my friends and family, I found myself making excuses I had heard other women make for partners who did not deserve them. He is just stressed from work. He did not mean it that way. You do not know him like I do. My mother had pulled me aside at Christmas last year, her eyes full of concern. "Megan, honey, does Brandon make you happy?" "Truly happy." I had brushed off her question with a practiced smile. "Of course, Mom, we are getting married." But happy was not the word I would have used if I had been honest with myself. Comfortable, maybe established, invested. I had put so much of myself into the relationship that the idea of it not working out felt like admitting to 4 years of failure. The engagement had come 18 months into our relationship. Brandon had proposed at his parents' 40th anniversary party, getting down on one knee in front of their entire extended family and social circle. I had said yes with 200 people watching their phones recording the moment. What else could I say? That was when I should have recognized the pattern. Brandon loved an audience. He loved being the center of attention, loved moments that made him look good in front of others. The proposal was not really about us. It was about the performance. The wedding planning had been another series of compromises that only went one direction. I wanted a small ceremony with close family and friends. Brandon wanted a grand event with 300 guests, most of whom I had never met. I wanted a simple venue that reflected our personalities. Brandon wanted the most expensive hotel ballroom in the city because that was where his business contacts expected people of his status to celebrate. Every time I pushed back, he had a way of making me feel unreasonable. This is not just about you, Megan. This is about our future. The people at this wedding are people we need for our careers. He meant his career. My job as an event coordinator did not require impressing pharmaceutical executives and their wives. But I had given in again and again because somewhere along the way I had stopped trusting my own judgment. Brandon had a talent for making his preferences seem like logical necessities while my desires seemed like emotional indulgences. I pulled into the driveway of my apartment complex and sat in the car for a few more minutes, thinking about all the subtle ways he had enjoyed having power over me. There was the time he had corrected my pronunciation at a dinner party, making it seem like a joke, but ensuring everyone knew I had made a mistake. There was the way he would compliment me in public, but criticize me in private. My clothes, my hair, the way I told stories. There were the plans he would make without consulting me, and then act hurt if I expressed any frustration. And there was the money. Brandon made more than I did, and he never let me forget it. He paid for expensive dinners and vacations. But those gestures came with invisible strings attached. When I tried to contribute or suggest more affordable options, he would shake his head and say, "Let me handle it. You do not need to worry about money." What he meant was, I control this. You do not get to make these decisions. I had been so focused on making the relationship work that I had not noticed how small I had become within it. The woman who had once dreamed of starting her own business now asked permission to go to lunch with her own friends. The woman who had once had strong opinions about everything now deferred to Brandon's judgment on nearly every decision. Sitting in my car, I felt the weight of those 4 years differently than I had just an hour ago. This was not the end of a love story. This was an escape route I had not known I needed. My phone buzzed again. It was Brandon. That was not the reaction I expected. "We should talk." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then, I did something I had not done in 4 years. I did not respond. That evening, Natalie arrived at my apartment with 2 bottles of wine and a look of fierce determination on her face. "Tell me everything," she said, settling onto my couch. "And I mean everything. Do not leave out a single detail." So I told her about the restaurant, the announcement, his friends watching like spectators at a sporting event, about how he had requested that specific table, how he had insisted his friends join us, how the whole thing had felt staged from the moment. We walked through the door. Natalie's expression shifted from concern to understanding to something that looked like vindication. "I knew it," she said quietly. "I knew something was wrong with that guy." "You did, Megan. I have been your best friend since freshman year of college. I watched you change over the past 4 years. The woman who used to argue with professors and stay up all night working on her business. Plan started asking permission to have coffee with me. Do you know how many times I wanted to say something? I felt a flush of embarrassment. Why did you not? Because you were not ready to hear it, she said gently. And because I knew if I pushed too hard, he would use that to isolate you further. I was waiting for you to see it yourself. Her words settled over me like a weighted blanket. She had been watching, waiting, protecting our friendship by not forcing a confrontation I would have defended against. The thing that bothers me most, I said slowly, is that he planned it. This was not impulsive. He chose a public setting. He invited witnesses. He wanted to humiliate me in front of people. Natalie nodded. He wanted to break you. He wanted everyone to see you fall apart so he could look like the one in control. But I did not fall apart. No, she said with a small smile. You did not. And I bet that is driving him absolutely crazy right now. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Brandon. I think you are in shock. This is not like you. Call me when you are ready to have a real conversation. What does he want? Natalie asked. He thinks I am in shock. He is confused that I am not begging him to reconsider. Natalie laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of course he is. Men like Brandon expect a certain reaction. They expect tears, desperation, bargaining. When they do not get it, they do not know what to do. I set my phone face down on the coffee table. His friends were laughing at first. When I removed the ring and said I was going to throw a narrow escape party, they thought it was hilarious. Like I was some delusional woman who did not understand what was happening. What made them stop laughing? I thought about it for a moment. I think it was when I did not fall apart. When I thanked him for being honest and walked out with my head held high, they did not know how to react to that. Natalie poured us each a glass of wine and handed one to me. So this narrow escape party, are you actually going to do it? The idea had come to me spontaneously in the restaurant. A deflection born from some instinct I did not fully understand at the time, but the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. You know what I think I am, I said, but not for the reasons he probably thinks. Not to mock him or cause drama. I want to reclaim the narrative before he can rewrite it. What do you mean? Brandon is going to tell people his version of what happened. He is going to paint himself as the hero who had to end things with a woman who was not right for him. He is going to make me look pathetic or crazy or both. But if I throw a party celebrating my narrow escape, if I frame this as a positive thing that happened to me rather than something that was done to me, I take that power away from him. Natalie's eyes lit up. That is brilliant. You are not the jilted fiancée crying into her pillow. You are the woman who dodged a bullet and is celebrating her freedom. Exactly. We talked for hours that night, and with each passing hour, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Natalie helped me see things I had been too close to notice. The way Brandon's compliments always had conditions attached. The way his gestures of kindness came with expectations of gratitude. The way he had systematically separated me from people who might have challenged his influence. There is something else I said as the evening grew late. Something about the way his friends were positioned at that restaurant. Tyler was filming on his phone. I saw it when I stood up to leave. Natalie's expression hardened. He wanted video. He wanted footage of you breaking down. The realization hit me like ice water. This was not just a public breakup. This was a production. Brandon had wanted documentation of my humiliation, something he could share, something that would cement the narrative he was trying to create. That is why he looked so confused when I did not cry. I said he was expecting a specific reaction, something that would make good content. Content for what? I did not have an answer yet, but I knew there was more to uncover. Brandon had planned this too carefully for it to be just about ending our relationship. There was something else going on, some deeper motivation I had not yet discovered. I need to find out why, I said quietly. Not so I can change anything that happened, but so I can understand what I was really dealing with. Natalie squeezed my hand. Whatever you find, I'm here. And for what it is worth, I am proud of you. The woman I saw today at that restaurant, that is the woman I have been waiting to see for 4 years. I looked at her at this friend who had stood by me, even when I had not been able to stand up for myself, and I felt the first real stirring of something that might have been hope. Tomorrow, I would start digging. Tonight, I would rest. The next few days were filled with messages from Brandon that grew increasingly confused and then agitated. Sunday morning. Megan, this silent treatment is immature. Call me. Sunday evening. I did not do this to hurt you. We need to talk like adults. Monday, people are asking me what happened. You need to help me explain this properly. Tuesday, I heard you were telling people you were throwing a party. What is that about? Are you trying to embarrass me? I did not respond to any of them. For the first time in 4 years, I was not arranging my actions around Brandon's comfort or expectations. The silence felt powerful in a way I had not anticipated. In the meantime, I began the practical work of untangling our shared life. The wedding had been scheduled for the following April, 6 months away. We had deposits on a venue, a caterer, a photographer, a florist, all under my name because Brandon had insisted it made the paperwork simpler, though I now suspected it was because he did not want his name attached if things went wrong. I called the venue first. The coordinator, a woman named Patricia, who I had worked with several times during my career, was sympathetic when I explained the situation. "The deposit is non-refundable," she said apologetically. "But under the circumstances, I can offer you a credit for any future event you might want to host." "Actually," I said, "an idea forming. I might want to use that space sooner than expected. Would next month work?" Patricia sounded surprised but intrigued. "What kind of event are you planning?" "A celebration," I said, "of new beginnings." The caterer was similarly interesting. The photographer offered to refund half the deposit as a gesture of goodwill. The florist, who had become a friend over the months of planning, said she would happily provide arrangements for whatever I was planning. Next, no charge for labor. Each conversation reinforced something I had begun to realize during those endless planning sessions. The people I had been working with had seen something I had missed. When I told them the wedding was canceled because my fiancé had ended things, more than one of them responded with variations of, "I'm sorry to hear that, but honestly, I wondered how long it would last." "What do you mean?" I asked the florist, Dominic, whose shop was downtown and who had been helping me source sustainable arrangements. "Megan, every time you came in here, you were stressed and apologetic. You kept changing things because he wanted different flowers or different colors or different quantities." "Most brides make changes, but you seem like you were trying to please someone who could not be pleased. That is not how wedding planning should feel." His words stayed with me long after I hung up the phone. By Wednesday, I had a clearer picture of what the next few weeks would look like. The narrow escape party would happen at the same venue, where the wedding reception had been planned using the deposit that was already paid. The date would be 3 weeks from Saturday, enough time to plan, but soon enough that the story would still be fresh. I started making a guest list, and that was when things got interesting. Brandon and I had planned the wedding together, which meant I had access to all our shared documents, including the master guest list. As I scrolled through the names, I noticed something that made me stop. There was a separate list, a list I had not created and had never seen before. It was titled Priority Notifications and contained about 40 names. Brandon's friends, his colleagues, some family members I barely knew. Next to each name was a note. Wedding update. Send immediately. I clicked on the document history and felt my stomach tighten. Brandon had created this list 2 weeks before that Saturday lunch, 2 weeks before he ended things. He had been planning his announcement for at least 14 days. The separate list suggested he had prepared a specific message for these people, something he wanted them to receive immediately after the breakup. I dug deeper into our shared files and found a draft of the message he had planned to send. As some of you witnessed today, I made a difficult decision to end my engagement to Megan. This was not easy, but I realized I could not commit to a future with someone who was not aligned with my values and goals. I appreciate your support during this time and hope you will respect my need for privacy as I move forward. The message painted him as thoughtful and decisive. It made me sound like the problem, someone with misaligned values and goals. It was been carefully crafted to control how people would perceive the breakup, but there was more. In his sent folder, I found messages to his friends from that morning before we even arrived at the restaurant. Today is the day. Meeting at the bistro at 12:30. I want you there to witness. This is going to be good. And Tyler's response. Finally been waiting for this. I will record everything. They had planned it together. His friends were not innocent bystanders who happened to be there. They were co-conspirators in a deliberate public humiliation. My hands were shaking as I continued reading. Another message. This one Tassamian named Rebecca sent the night before. Tomorrow I am ending things with Megan. I know you have been patient. I cannot wait to be free and start our new chapter. Rebecca. I did not know Rebecca, but apparently Brandon did. Apparently, Brandon knew her well enough to have been communicating about a future together while he was still engaged to me. I sat back from my computer, absorbing what I had discovered. This was not just a breakup he had planned. This was a coordinated campaign. He had a replacement ready, an audience he symboled, a narrative prepared, and a desire for documented evidence of my breakdown. The only thing he had not planned for was me refusing to break. My phone buzzed with yet another message from him. I do not understand why you are ignoring me. This is not healthy behavior. For the first time since Saturday, I typed a response. I am not ignoring you. I am just no longer interested in having conversations that serve your needs at the expense of my own. I think we are done communicating. His reply came almost instantly. I turned off my phone and went back to the documents. There was more to uncover, and I was determined to find all of it. The deeper I looked, the clearer the picture became. Brandon had not been planning his exit for weeks. He had been planning it for months. The evidence was scattered across our shared accounts and documents, breadcrumbs I had been too trusting to notice. Rebecca was not new. Through the phone records on our family plan, I discovered they had been communicating since early summer, 5 months before Brandon's public announcement. The calls started brief and rare, then slowly grew longer and more frequent. I did not need access to the messages themselves. The pattern was enough. He had been building a new relationship while still engaged to me. The public breakup was not an ending. It was a transition. What I still did not understand was why he chose to end things so publicly. If he wanted to leave, he could have done it privately. The theatrical setting suggested something deliberate. The answer came when Natalie called me, her voice tight with anger. Brandon had been telling people for months that I was emotionally unstable, clingy, controlling, someone he feared breaking up with privately. The public breakup was designed to create witnesses. He wanted proof, but I did not react the way he expected. That was the flaw in his plan. Tyler had filmed the whole thing, hoping to capture my breakdown. Instead, he recorded me thanking Brandon calmly and walking away. Brandon had built an entire narrative where he was the hero escaping a difficult woman. I destroyed it simply by refusing to play my role. After the call, I thought about all the times Brandon had told me what others supposedly thought of me. My friends, my family, my colleagues. I had believed him and adjusted myself accordingly. It never occurred to me that he might be the one shaping those perceptions, quietly poisoning opinions while preparing his exit. This was not a relationship that failed. It was one that had been manipulated, and Brandon had not counted on one. Thing I still had access to everything. Our shared files, accounts, and communication history. He assumed I would be too devastated to look. He underestimated me. I organized the evidence carefully. The affair timeline, the pre-written breakup messages, the planned witnesses. I had no intention of exposing him publicly. That would only feed his narrative. Instead, I decided to let the truth surface naturally. The party was not about Brandon. It was about me, my freedom, and my future. The invitation said nothing about the breakup. It simply celebrated a new beginning. The guest list included people who loved me and some who had been invited to witness my supposed breakdown. Let them see the difference for themselves. If anyone asked what happened, I would tell the truth calmly. No exaggeration, no drama, just facts. The truth, I realized, did not need force. It only needed clarity. Planning the event consumed me in the best way. I transformed what would have been a wedding reception into something bold and personal. Colors I loved, music I chose. A space that finally reflected me, not the version of myself I had edited to fit Brandon's preferences. People I had lost during the relationship began reaching out. My college roommate admitted she had been dreading the wedding because I seemed smaller every time we spoke. Others echoed the same thing. They had seen it. They were waiting for me to be ready. The night before the party, Brandon sent one final message warning me not to damage his reputation. I deleted it without replying. He was scared. His story was slipping, and he knew it. The party was warm and full of joy. Friends, family, people I had not seen in years filled the room. Laughter replaced the silence I had lived with for 4 years. And when people asked what really happened, I told them, quietly, honestly. Screenshots spoke louder than accusations. By the time Brandon arrived uninvited, the narrative had already shifted. When he accused me of being unstable, I asked him to look around the room. The faces staring back at him said everything. Calm does not look like instability. Truth does not look like vengeance. He left without another word. What followed was not triumph. It was peace. My life expanded instead of shrinking. Friendships returned. My career finally took shape. I built the business I had postponed for years. I stopped apologizing for who I was. The moment Brandon planned as my destruction became my beginning, he tried to break me publicly. Instead, he showed everyone who he really was. And I walked away free, stronger, and finally myself.